The Second World War was a time of unimaginable chaos and unthinkable courage. Across Europe, Asia, and the Pacific, millions of soldiers faced the horrors of battle, and countless others found themselves trapped far from home, behind barbed wire and locked gates. For some, survival meant more than fighting the enemy. It meant escaping from the very places designed to hold them captive. These were no ordinary prisons. They were heavily guarded camps, often miles from friendly lines, where a single misstep could mean death. Yet, amidst the despair and fear, some men and women dared the impossible. They planned, they risked everything, and they ran. And what they accomplished has become the stuff of legend. Imagine standing in the shadow of a towering fence, knowing that on the other side lies freedom, but also certain death if you're caught. The air is thick with tension, each guard's footstep echoing like a countdown to disaster. It is in these moments, in the stillness of the night, that some of history's most daring acts were born. The ingenuity and courage of these prisoners would defy not only the physical constraints of their cages, but the very limits of human endurance. Prison camps during World War II varied widely, but all shared a single purpose: to break the spirit of those held within. Officers and enlisted men captured in Europe were sent to stalags or oflags, prisoner of war camps that were meant to be escape-proof. Guards patrolled relentlessly, dogs prowled the perimeter, and the threat of execution hung over anyone who dared to run. Yet, even in these grim conditions, prisoners refused to surrender their hope. They dug tunnels with spoons, forged passes from scraps of paper, memorized guard routines, and even orchestrated elaborate distractions. Each plan was a dance with danger, and failure often meant the ultimate price. In the Pacific, the situation was even more harrowing. Allied soldiers captured by the Japanese faced brutal conditions, with many camps operating far from the prying eyes of international oversight. Here, the chances of escape were slim, and the consequences even grimmer. Starvation, disease, and harsh labor were daily realities, yet small sparks of resistance flared again and again. Prisoners who managed to escape from these camps became symbols of resilience, their stories a testament to the human will to survive. Some escapes were spontaneous, born of desperation and sheer impulse. Others were meticulously planned over months, sometimes years. They required a combination of cunning, patience, and luck. In one famous camp, prisoners would secretly communicate using coded messages hidden in letters to their families, while others used parts scavenged from their surroundings to fashion tools for digging and climbing. Every moment was a risk. Every action could lead to discovery. And yet, the allure of freedom was stronger than fear, driving these men and women to attempt what seemed impossible. It's hard to overstate the psychological weight of these prison breaks. For the captives, the camps were not just physical barriers, they were mental prisons as well. The daily monotony, the humiliation, the constant surveillance, all of it wore on the mind. Escaping wasn't just about fleeing from guards. It was about reclaiming a sense of control, a flicker of dignity in a world determined to strip it away. When a prisoner began to plot an escape, it wasn't just a tactical decision. It was a statement of defiance, a refusal to let the war and the enemy define the limits of one's life. Some of the most legendary prison breaks of the war have become almost mythic. They involve intricate tunnels stretching for hundreds of meters, secret alliances formed among inmates, and astonishing feats of improvisation under the harshest of conditions. Guards were often clever and ruthless, but ingenuity and determination frequently proved stronger. In several cases, prisoners would coordinate with resistance fighters outside the camps, smuggling in tools, maps, or even weapons to aid their flight. These escapes were not just acts of survival, they were acts of rebellion, small victories in a war that often felt overwhelming and endless. And yet, not all escapes were successful. Many attempts ended tragically, with prisoners recaptured, punished, or executed. The stakes were unimaginably high. But for those who did succeed, the stories are breathtaking. Imagine slipping past guards in the dead of night, navigating treacherous terrain with nothing but the stars to guide you, evading capture for days, weeks, or even months. Every step toward freedom was fraught with danger, and every choice carried life or death consequences. As we delve into these stories, we will encounter men who dug tunnels using spoons hidden in their boots, women who disguised themselves in enemy uniforms, and groups of prisoners who coordinated daring escapes that involved everything from stolen trucks to daring river crossings. We will see how courage, creativity, and sheer perseverance allowed them to beat the odds and rewrite their fates. What makes these prison breaks so compelling is not just the thrill of the escape itself, but the human drama behind it. These were ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, facing fear that most of us can barely imagine. They were soldiers, officers, medics, even civilians caught in the machinery of war. And in the darkest moments, when all seemed lost, they chose to fight for something greater, the chance to live, to return home, to see their loved ones again. Tonight, we begin a journey into the heart of these daring escapes. We will explore the planning, the risks, the near misses, and the triumphs that defined them. Some of these stories are well known, others have been forgotten by time, but all of them share a common thread: the relentless pursuit of freedom in the face of impossible odds. From the snow-covered forests of Eastern Europe to the sweltering jungles of the Pacific, the stories we are about to tell are filled with tension, suspense, and moments of incredible bravery. These were not simple acts of running away, they were carefully orchestrated operations, carried out with precision and nerve. Each escape tells us something profound about the human spirit, that even in the darkest moments, people can find light. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. And so, as the night falls and the guards' change shifts, we step inside the wire fences, into the cold barracks and shadowy corridors of World War II prisons. We meet the men and women who refused to be caged, who risked everything for the taste of freedom. Their stories will astonish you, inspire you, and remind us all of the lengths to which people will go to reclaim their lives. The war may have been fought on battlefields, in the skies, and across the seas, but some of the most incredible battles of all were fought behind locked gates, where courage, cunning, and hope collided. These are the stories of those battles, the daring escapes that defied the impossible. And it all begins with a spark of determination, a single decision to act, to dig, to hide, to run. One of the most legendary escapes of World War II began in a cold, grey camp in Poland, deep behind enemy lines. The camp was surrounded by tall fences topped with barbed wire, with guards patrolling every inch, dogs sniffing for any sign of movement. For the prisoners, life was a daily battle against despair, hunger, and the monotony of confinement. But within this bleak landscape, a group of men hatched a plan that would test every ounce of their courage. They called it the Great Tunnel. For months, they worked in secret, hiding their progress in the dirt floors of their barracks. They dug with anything they could find: spoons, scraps of metal, even pieces of wood scavenged from broken furniture. Each day, they carefully removed soil from the tunnel and hid it in the camp gardens, scattering it in a way that would never alert the guards. The work was grueling, their hands bled, their bodies ached, and discovery could mean instant execution. Yet they pressed on, driven by a shared vision of freedom. The tunnel stretched hundreds of meters, winding under the camp like a hidden artery to the outside world. Every corner had to be reinforced, every inch measured to ensure it wouldn't collapse. It was a feat of engineering as much as it was an act of defiance. And finally, after months of painstaking labor, the moment came. The prisoners decided to make their move under the cover of darkness, slipping silently into the tunnel and emerging on the far side of the wire. What followed was a desperate flight through forests and fields, evading patrols and dodging searchlights, relying only on courage and the faint glow of the moon. Many made it home, some were caught, but the audacity of the escape inspired countless others in camps across Europe. Thousands of kilometers away, in a Japanese prisoner of war camp in Southeast Asia, another story unfolded, one that was no less daring, though entirely different in nature. The camp was infamous for its brutality. Guards were merciless, rations scarce, and illness rampant. For the Allied prisoners, survival meant not only enduring the harsh conditions, but also outsmarting their captors. Here, a group of prisoners turned to disguise and deception. They carefully observed their guards, memorizing routines and learning the exact moments when vigilance lapsed. They fashioned uniforms from scraps of cloth, painted them with makeshift dyes, and practiced marching in perfect synchrony to mimic the enemy. Their plan was audacious: walk out of the camp as if they belonged there. On the day of their escape, hearts pounding, they strode past the guards, speaking in the language they had practiced, masks of confidence concealing the fear beneath. Step by step, they crossed the camp gates, and step by step, they reclaimed their freedom. Some were recaptured, yes, but several made it to safety, slipping into the dense jungle where Allied forces awaited. Not all escapes relied on tunnels or clever disguises. In another notorious camp, prisoners orchestrated an elaborate scheme involving sheer misdirection. They staged a theatrical distraction. A fake argument in one corner of the camp drew the guards' attention, while other prisoners quietly pried open a side gate, slipping into the night one by one. Timing was everything. One wrong move, one delayed footstep, and the plan would have failed entirely. But precision and coordination won the day. That night, dozens of prisoners vanished into the surrounding countryside, leaving behind only the echo of their defiance. Even in camps considered escape-proof, audacity sometimes meant bending the rules of physics. One story from a European camp tells of prisoners who constructed a makeshift glider from scavenged wood, canvas, and nails. With careful measurements and trial runs inside the barn where they hid it, they built a contraption capable of lifting a single person over the camp's high walls. On the chosen night, one brave soul took to the air, gliding silently over the fences and disappearing into the darkness beyond. The guards were stunned, the camp thrown into chaos, and the prisoner's ingenuity became legendary, a reminder that in desperate times, creativity can be as powerful as courage. Prisoners didn't act alone either. Resistance networks and sympathetic locals often played a critical role. In France, for instance, Allied prisoners worked with underground networks to coordinate escapes from German camps. Escapees would be given food, clothing, and false papers to help them travel safely to neutral territories. These collaborations were fraught with danger. A single betrayal could cost lives. But for those willing to trust and to plan meticulously, the payoff was freedom. Some prisoners walked hundreds of miles across occupied territory, guided only by the stars, sympathetic villagers, and their unwavering will to survive. The human element in these stories cannot be overstated. Bonds of trust formed under the most extreme conditions. Prisoners would cover for one another, share information, and risk their lives to ensure a fellow inmate had a chance to escape. In many cases, successful breaks involved complex teamwork. Lookouts posted along walls, signals passed through barracks, food and supplies stashed in clever hiding places. These acts of solidarity not only facilitated escape, but reinforced hope, the belief that even in captivity, they were not alone. Interestingly, some escapes succeeded because of the enemy's own hubris. Guards often underestimated the ingenuity of the prisoners they held. Many thought confinement would crush morale, yet they failed to anticipate the ingenuity of those desperate to return to freedom. Hidden compartments in shoes, hollowed-out loaves of bread for smuggling tools, and even coded messages hidden in letters home were all employed to turn the odds in favor of the captives. Every clever maneuver chipped away at the illusion of absolute control, proving that determination could outmatch brute force. And while we remember these escapes for their boldness, the stories also reveal the incredible resilience of the human mind. Months of meticulous planning, sleepless nights, and constant fear of discovery tested prisoners in ways most of us could never imagine. Some memorized guard routines down to the second. Others spent weeks mapping the camp and surrounding areas from memory. Many risked illness, starvation, and exposure to the elements, all for the chance to reclaim their lives. It was a test of endurance, intelligence, and courage, and the successes are a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Even as these daring escapes unfolded, the stakes remained terrifyingly high. A single captured escapee could trigger brutal reprisals, entire barracks could face punishment, and yet prisoners persisted. They knew the risks, they calculated them, and they pressed on anyway. Every success, no matter how small, sent a message to the captors. Confinement could not extinguish hope, and even the most formidable fences could not contain the human desire for freedom. By now, you can begin to see a pattern. ingenuity, courage, teamwork, and relentless determination. These were not mere flights from prison, they were acts of defiance against an oppressive machine, small rebellions that illuminated the capacity of ordinary people to perform extraordinary deeds under unimaginable pressure. Each escape carried suspense, each tunnel, disguise, or distraction, a nail-biting challenge, and each successful flight a triumph not just over walls and guards, but over despair itself. As we continue to explore these stories, it's important to remember that behind every daring escape was a person, an individual with hopes, fears, and the sheer will to survive. Some went on to return to the front lines, others reunited with their families, and some became symbols of courage and perseverance long after the war ended. These escapes remind us that heroism often takes the most unexpected forms, and that even in the darkest hours, ordinary people can accomplish the extraordinary. The night was pitch black, the wind whispering through the trees, carrying the scent of freedom and danger alike. In one of Europe's most notorious prisoner-of-war camps, a group of men had been planning their escape for months. Every detail had been calculated, the tunnel reinforced, the guards' routines memorized, the timing synchronized down to the second. As the hour approached, tension hung in the air like a living thing. One wrong step could mean capture, brutal punishment, or death. Yet, in the faces of the men, there was a quiet resolve. They knew this was their chance, and they would not let it slip away. The tunnel exit loomed ahead, the earth cold and damp beneath their hands, the metal grates of the fences just meters away. One by one, they emerged, bodies trembling from exhaustion, hearts racing with the intoxicating mix of fear and exhilaration. Outside, the world was silent but not forgiving. Guards patrolled with torches, dogs barked in the distance, and the forest beyond was filled with unseen perils. Every step was a gamble. Some of the men stumbled through the underbrush, cut by branches, bruised by hidden roots, but they kept moving. Behind them, the camp remained oblivious, the dawn hours yet to reveal the empty beds and shocked guards. Meanwhile, across the continent, in a Japanese-run camp, another escape was unfolding. A group of prisoners had disguised themselves in stolen uniforms, voices low, footsteps careful, every movement choreographed like a dance. They walked past sentries who, for a moment, saw only routine figures, and not the desperate men underneath. The tension was unbearable, one mispronounced word, one hesitant glance, and the illusion would crumble. Yet, inch by inch, they crossed the courtyard, gates looming ahead, and then, with a final silent prayer, they slipped into the shadows, merging with the jungle beyond. It was a miraculous escape, born of courage, cunning, and nerves of steel. Some escapes were almost cinematic in their execution. In one camp, prisoners staged a mock fight to draw guards away, while others quietly dismantled a section of the perimeter fence. Hidden beneath layers of debris, they crawled through the breach and disappeared into the night. Every second counted. The forest was a maze, the guards relentless, but determination carried them forward. One escapee later described it as moving through a living nightmare, where fear and hope collided at every step, and yet freedom shimmered just out of reach, urging them onward. Not all escapes were solitary endeavors. In one remarkable case, dozens of prisoners coordinated to flee simultaneously. Some acted as decoys, creating distractions, while others made their way quietly toward prearranged rendezvous points. Timing was everything. A single misstep could doom the entire operation. And yet, the plan worked. Under the cover of darkness, the prisoners vanished into the surrounding countryside, their silhouettes swallowed by the night. For weeks afterward, the camp was in chaos, guards searching in vain, while the escapees made their perilous journey towards safety. Perhaps the most astonishing stories involve ingenuity that borders on brilliance. In one camp, prisoners constructed a makeshift glider, hidden in a barn, and assembled piece by piece under the noses of their captors. When the night of the escape arrived, the glider lifted a prisoner silently over the walls, carrying him into freedom. It was audacious, almost impossible, yet it worked a testament to human creativity under pressure. For those who witnessed it, it was a moment that defied belief, proof that where the human spirit wills, there is always a way. As these escapes unfolded, the consequences of failure loomed ever larger. Many who attempted to flee were recaptured, enduring harsh punishment or execution. Entire barracks could face retaliation. And yet, despite the risks, prisoners continued to try. There was a shared understanding. Freedom was worth any price. Each escape, whether successful or not, became a story of defiance, a refusal to surrender hope, a declaration that no wire, no guard, and no camp could break the human will. Beyond the physical obstacles, the mental fortitude required was staggering. Months of confinement, hunger, and fear could crush even the strongest. Yet the escapees endured, planning with precision, observing the enemy, and trusting one another with their lives. They memorized maps, calculated distances, and developed codes to communicate secretly. Every action was a calculated risk, and every successful maneuver was a triumph of intellect as much as bravery. And finally, when freedom was grasped, it was never easy. Many escapees faced harsh terrain, enemy patrols, and weeks without food. Some crossed frozen forests, others navigated jungles teeming with disease. The journey to safety was often more perilous than the escape itself. Yet, each step toward home was a testament to human resilience, a reminder that courage does not end at the gate, but continues on the path beyond it. These stories of daring prison breaks leave us with more than awe. They leave us with lessons in hope, ingenuity, and the unbreakable human spirit. They remind us that even in the darkest hours, people can rise above despair. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. That freedom, even when it seems impossible, is always worth striving for. Many of the prisoners who survived these escapes went on to fight again, returning to the front lines with a renewed sense of purpose. Others returned home to families who had feared them lost forever, and some became legends, their daring acts studied, retold, and celebrated long after the war had ended. Their stories continue to inspire, reminding us that even when the odds are stacked impossibly high, determination and courage can change the course of fate. Tonight, as we reflect on these incredible escapes, we remember that they were not merely acts of fleeing, they were profound assertions of humanity. Each escape represents the triumph of will over oppression, hope over despair, and courage over fear. They teach us that even in a world consumed by war, ordinary people are capable of extraordinary feats. And so, the fences, the guards, the barbed wire, they were no match for ingenuity, resolve, and the yearning for freedom. From the tunnels dug with bare hands to the gliders that soared into the night, these prisoners remind us that liberty is never given. It is claimed, often at great risk, with ingenuity, courage, and relentless determination. Their stories endure as some of the most remarkable feats of the human spirit in the history of warfare, testaments to what can be achieved when the desire for freedom burns brighter than fear itself.